Every great company begins with a simple idea. But the story of Starbucks began with a cup of coffee. But what if coffee was never the real product? It sounds hard to believe, but it's true. Starbucks isn't just one of the world's biggest coffee companies. It has built a business model so unique that, in some ways, it operates like a bank. And that's only part of the story. In this video, we'll uncover how a small store that once sold only coffee beans became a global empire. The surprising strategy behind its success, how it holds billions of dollars in customer money, and the fascinating Starbucks effect that can transform entire neighborhoods. By the end of this video, you'll never look at Starbucks the same way again. So, let's begin where the story started.
In the late 1960s, a man named Gordon Boker was traveling through Rome when he ordered a cappuccino at a small local cafe. The experience caught him completely off guard. The coffee was richer, smoother, and far more flavorful than anything he had tasted back home. At the time, most Americans were used to instant coffee, or the weak brews served in roadside diners. When Boker returned to the United States, he shared his discovery with two friends. Together, they saw an opportunity. What if they could introduce Americans to truly high-quality coffee? That idea led to the birth of Starbucks. When the first Starbucks opened in Seattle's historic waterfront district in 1971, it looked nothing like the coffee giant we know today. It sold premium coffee beans, tea, spices, and the equipment needed to brew coffee at home. The concept was simple, and growth came slowly, but it worked. Over the next decade, Starbucks quietly built a loyal customer base. By 1981, the company had expanded to 4 locations across Seattle, and demand for its coffee beans continued to rise. That success soon attracted the attention of a young businessman named Howard Schultz. Schultz understood struggle better than most. Raised in a low-income household, he had spent years fighting for opportunities. During college, money was so tight that he even sold his blood to help cover expenses. Through determination and relentless hard work, he eventually climbed the corporate ladder and became a vice president at a growing company. As fate would have it, that company supplied equipment to Starbucks. And that's how Howard Schultz first discovered the small Seattle coffee retailer. He decided to visit one of Starbucks' Seattle locations and see for himself what was driving the demand. The moment he walked into the store, something clicked. The aroma, the atmosphere, and most importantly, the quality of the coffee left a lasting impression. When Howard approached Starbucks' 3 founders about joining the company, they weren't eager to bring in an outsider. Even his own family questioned the decision. His mother warned him against walking away from a stable career for a tiny coffee business, but Howard saw something others didn't. He believed Starbucks had the potential to become far bigger than anyone imagined, so he kept calling, writing letters, and making his case. Month after month, he continued pushing for a chance to join the company. Eventually, after more than a year of persistence, the founders finally agreed. Not long after joining Starbucks, Howard Schultz found himself on a trip to Italy and was immediately fascinated by the country's coffee culture. But what captured his attention wasn't just the coffee itself. It was everything happening around it. Baristas knew customers by name. Conversations flowed freely between strangers. Then Howard tried something that was still virtually unknown in America. A cafe latte. The drink was simple, but the experience surrounding it felt revolutionary. Starbucks was already selling exceptional coffee beans, but in his eyes, the company was focused on only half the opportunity. He envisioned Starbucks becoming a destination, a space that existed somewhere between home and work. Howard Schultz returned from Italy energized and convinced he had discovered the future of coffee. When Howard proposed turning Starbucks into a cafe that served freshly made espresso drinks, the founders quickly rejected the idea. From their perspective, Starbucks was a retailer, not a restaurant. Their business revolved around selling premium coffee beans and equipment, and it was already working. Sales were growing, customers were loyal, and the company was profitable. Why gamble everything on an untested concept? As months passed, the disagreement grew harder to ignore. Howard became increasingly frustrated. He was convinced that the Italian coffeehouse experience could succeed in America, but it was clear that Starbucks wasn't ready to embrace that vision. In 1985, Howard made his decision. He left Starbucks and launched his own coffee venture called Il Giornale, named after the Italian word for newspaper. His goal was simple but ambitious: combine Starbucks' high-quality coffee with the warmth, community, and atmosphere he had experienced in Italian cafes. Almost everyone thought he was making a mistake. Friends, colleagues, and potential investors questioned why he would walk away from a promising career to chase what seemed like a niche idea. The criticism only intensified when he began searching for funding. Over the next year, Howard pitched his concept to 242 different people. A staggering 217 of them said no. In the mid-1980s, a typical cup of coffee in America cost around 50 cents. Howard's plan? Charge nearly $3 for a cup. To most investors, the idea sounded ridiculous.
Yet Howard refused to quit. After countless meetings, endless rejections, and months of pitching his vision, he finally secured enough funding to launch his Italian-inspired coffee chain, Il Giornale. The stores brought together everything he had admired in Italy: espresso drinks, community, atmosphere, and premium coffee. And surprisingly, it worked. Customers embraced the concept, proving that Americans were willing to pay more for a better experience. But just as Howard's new business was gaining momentum, an unexpected opportunity appeared. In 1987, Starbucks founders decided they were ready to move on and sell the company. Because they still respected Howard and maintained a good relationship with him, they gave him the first chance to buy it. For Howard, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. There was just one catch. The asking price was $3.8 million, and he didn't have anywhere near that kind of money. So once again, he found himself doing what he had done so many times before: knocking on doors, calling investors, and pitching a dream. At first, everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. He reached out to many of the investors he had built relationships with while funding Il Giornale, and explained why acquiring Starbucks could be transformational. Then, without warning, the entire deal was threatened. One of the investors he approached became so interested in Starbucks that instead of helping Howard buy the company, he began exploring ways to acquire it himself. Suddenly, the opportunity Howard had spent years working toward was in danger of slipping through his fingers. Unsure of what to do next, he shared the situation with a friend. That conversation would end up changing everything. His friend told him to come by the office the next morning and meet a senior partner. When Howard arrived, he was introduced to an influential attorney named Bill Gates Sr., the father of the future Microsoft founder. After listening to the story, Gates Sr. decided to take matters into his own hands. According to Howard, the two walked straight into the office of the investor who was trying to take over the deal. Standing over his desk, Gates Sr. made his position crystal clear. He told the investor that this wasn't how the deal was going to happen, and that Howard deserved the chance to pursue the vision he had worked so hard to build. Remarkably, it worked. The investor backed down. With the obstacle removed, Howard pushed forward and successfully raised the $3.8 million needed to acquire Starbucks. At last, the company was his, and the moment he took control, everything changed. Howard Schultz wasted no time bringing his vision to life. The ideas that had once been rejected were now becoming Starbucks' future. When Howard took over in 1987, Starbucks had just 17 stores. Guided by a clear blueprint for growth, the company expanded rapidly across the United States before entering international markets such as Japan, the Philippines, and the United Kingdom. Starbucks was no longer a small Seattle business. It was becoming a global phenomenon. Growth accelerated year after year. By 2000, Howard stepped aside as CEO to focus on international expansion. At its peak, Starbucks was opening more than 7 new stores every day, and its iconic green logo became a familiar sight in cities, airports, shopping centers, and college campuses around the world. By 2008, Starbucks had become one of the world's most recognizable consumer brands. Eventually, the problems began showing up in Starbucks' financial results. The company wasn't just facing a recession, it had lost the identity that made it special. To save Starbucks, the board brought Howard Schultz back as CEO. This time, his goal wasn't expansion. It was rebuilding the Starbucks experience. Howard believed the company had become too focused on efficiency and had forgotten what customers truly loved. So he brought back the personal touches that made Starbucks unique, from handcrafted coffee to the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Then he made one of the boldest decisions in corporate history. Starbucks temporarily closed every company-owned store in the United States to retrain more than 100,000 baristas. The move cost millions of dollars, but Howard believed great coffee began with well-trained people. The decision grabbed headlines around the world and sent a clear message. Starbucks was returning to its roots. The strategy worked. Customers came back, the company recovered, and Starbucks resumed its rapid global expansion. Today, Starbucks operates tens of thousands of stores worldwide and is one of the most recognized brands on the planet. From a boy raised in a struggling family to the man who built a global coffee empire, Howard Schultz proved that Starbucks was never just about coffee. It was about creating an experience people wanted to come back to. But the most interesting question isn't how Starbucks became successful. What business is Starbucks really in? Most people would immediately answer, coffee. But the reality is far more complicated. Like McDonald's, Starbucks has become much more than the product it sells. One of its biggest strengths is choosing the right locations. This has led to what's often called the Starbucks effect. When a Starbucks opens in a neighborhood, nearby property values often rise over time. It's not because Starbucks directly increases prices, but because it's exceptionally good at identifying areas that are about to grow. Its stores often attract new businesses, more customers, and further investment, helping transform entire neighborhoods. But this success has also drawn criticism. Many argue that as Starbucks expands, independent cafes struggle to compete, causing cities to lose some of their local character. Despite the debate, Starbucks continues to grow, and its ability to identify high-potential locations remains one of its greatest competitive advantages. And while real estate has played a major role in its success, it's only one part of the story. Starbucks isn't just in the coffee business. In many ways, it also operates like a bank. Millions of customers load money into the Starbucks app before making a purchase. That means billions of dollars can sit in Starbucks accounts, giving the company a steady source of cash to invest in new stores, technology, and future growth. Howard Schultz understood that people weren't just buying coffee. They were buying convenience, consistency, community, and an experience they could count on every time they walked through the door. That's what made Starbucks different. It wasn't the coffee alone that built a global empire. It was the experience. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of the Starbucks story. The world's biggest companies don't just sell products. They create experiences that people keep coming back for.